Hi, everyone. My name is Devin Dupuis, and I'm a tech specialist here on the Fusion 360 team. I want to talk about today's live stream a little bit first before we get started. We're doing this one on tabs, right? And this is going to be part one of a two-part series. On this first part, we're actually going to go over some basic manufacturing methods with tabs. And what I really want you guys to do is put as much feedback and questions in the comments. And I'm going to go through that and make sure that Angelo and myself on the part two, that not only with the stuff that we want to show, that we cover the majority of your guys' questions that are relevant. So follow along with me. We're going to hop into some basic parts here. We're going to walk through three examples today, going from basic to harder, and then this live stream is really focusing on like basic three-axis tabs. So some of the ways you guys might be currently using, some other manufacturing methods that maybe you could use in the future to make some parts that are a little bit more difficult. And then on the next one, we're going to get into some of those more advanced tabbing techniques that you'd see on like fourth axis machines or some five axis machines. So let's hop right into it and let's get started. Here on this first basic part, we're going to go through and I'm going to show you how to tab this. So we're also going to walk through kind of how I would program this because this is a pretty simple part. So once we get our part open, we just go from here to manufacture. I'm going to hop in here and make a setup. Now, this manufacturing method I'm about to do is really good if you don't have a lot of extra stock. So generally, when we're doing tabs and stuff like that, we need to have a lot more material, and that's the hold on the part. So we're really sacrificing, kind of making a fixture to hold our part. To get that ease of use to just make one or two parts maybe. This is a really good method for that. So in this case, I'm going to go here and I'm going to set up my stock. I'm going to go to fixed size stock. I'm going to have this round up to the nearest half inch. That way we get some clean numbers there. And then what I want to do here is if we don't have a lot of material here, so maybe even we could try 1 1/4, so maybe 0.25. You see we don't have much room underneath the part. So that really doesn't give us a lot to hold on with. We can make this like 20 thou offset from the top. And then we only have a little bit of material here, and we're going to try to work with that. Um, we could bump this up to maybe 375, and that might give us, kind of what we want. So really the goal here is to kind of tab this part off and not use a lot of extra stock. So once I have this all set, I'm just going to hit OK. How I would do a part like this is generally I just start off with a 3D adaptive, and I'm going to come in here and grab a tool that's long enough. And I have some of my values already set in here, the way I want to machine this. And we can just hit OK on this. This is going to kind of run around the part there. We can simulate this to see kind of what our progress is if we want to take a look at that. And that'll give us a better idea of what we need to do next. So let's turn some settings on here and we can play through this. All right, so we're pretty good there. What I would do then next is probably face this top. And I'm just going to come in here for my stock selection and just select this area just so we don't get a real big mess there. And then I do this often, and this is kind of a trick. So these had a lot of material left on there, and I want to go in and finish these. I want to keep like a constant tool pressure when I'm doing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use this parallel tool path, and I'm going to leave some stock on here. So let's come in here and let's leave like 10 thou. And then for my areas, I'm going to pick selection here, and let's grab this, and we'll grab this other side. We'll use contact point boundary, and we'll hit OK. We're not getting anything here, so let's see. So there we go. So now we got a nice little kind of rest roughing operation there for our part. We can simulate that and take a look. Let's play through these. We can see this comes in pretty nicely and kind of knocks off that, those big areas there that we didn't have. And then we can go right into finishing now. So in this case, I'm going to use 2D contour to do this. And we can actually come in here and grab this and this. We'll grab this and this. And then I want to make my lead in be 0 degrees. tangentially extend these like maybe 100 thousandths. And we can hit OK with that. That's good there. We can also add the outside for the bottom there. And now we can right click on this and hit simulate, play through these first parts, and then we can see kind of our rust roughing there. This is finishing those faces. And that looks pretty good there. So the only other thing we might want to come in here and finish this. Now we can grab this and we see that we have a 125 radius. So if we have a tool to do that, we can come in here and grab that. Let's go with 2D contour. Let's just switch and we'll make a tool if we don't have one. I'm going to grab this tool. Oops. And what I want to do is modify this one. Make this a bold nose. I'll just 0.125. And there we go. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab this geometry and this geometry. And then for my height, I want this to be on a selection, and I'll just select that floor. And we can make this also 0 degrees. So we can simulate this through then. And it looks like I swapped tools. So one of the things we could do here is let's go back in here, and I edited the wrong tool. So we can change this one. And then one of the things that might be a little unknown fact here is I modified this wrong tool, so it added all of these, and I didn't do this on purpose. But there is kind of a pretty easy fix here. I can take this flat end mill, and we can see this one has a bull nose. When we expand it, I can actually take this tool and I can drag it onto these operations. And everyone for the except this last one here. So the only other thing we might need to do is just finish these sides. We can just grab this parallel here, and I'm going to just copy it, and then I'm going to paste it in the top window here, and that's going to drop it at the bottom. And then what I'm going to do, just go in here because I made all my selections already, is just change my tool. Come over here, we'll take the stock to leave off, we'll tighten up these passes to like 10, and we'll hit OK. Oh, and that was the wrong tool, so we can switch it back there to a ball. And now, how are we going to cut this part off? So a lot of times we'd need a second operation here. We need to flip this around and then remove the material that's remaining on the bottom. And what I'm going to do here is just kind of a simpler workflow. I'm going to use a slit saw. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go to 2D contour. And I'm going to do this one without making any geometry. And later you'll see me do one where we make some geometry. So in here, let's just go create new tool. I'm going to come in here and go to slot mill. We'll make this like a 2-inch diameter. And this gets real funky real quick, so just bear with me. For a corner radius, we'll put in 0. For my flute length, we'll put in 0.1. And then I'm going to put in my shoulder length also as 0.1. I generally do this with almost all my tools. For my shaft diameter here, we'll put this at 0.5. And then we can kind of, right here with this body length, we can modulate how far it sticks out. So normally I would measure from the bottom to the tool holder to get a number here. We put in something like maybe 2 inches. So that's going to give us a certain amount of uh, cut room here to cut this off with a slit saw. So in this case, I'm going to come over here and go to geometry, and I'm going to hold down Alt, and I'm going to select just these middle contours right here. Now, I'm also going to turn on stock contours, and we can take a look at this, but I'm going to turn on stock contours because this is going to extend those out to the ends. And then under passes here, what I want to do is I want to turn on my stock to leave, and I'm actually going to make my radial and my axial. So my radial, let's just start out with like maybe negative zero point 0.5. And then for my axial, I want to make this how much, how far down I want to make the tool flute. So our thickness was 100,000, so I'm going to start out with minus zero point 0.1, and we can hit OK just to kind of see what this does. So we can come in here and hit simulate. We'll play through all of these and then we can look at this. And sometimes I turn this to transparent just to make it a little bit easier to see. And we're going to go to the side view here and we can see this um, kind of coming down and maybe I didn't, oh, yeah. So we can drag this on here and we can see this is kind of swooping down and that we're way out of the way here because of our tangential extension and we're coming into the part to kind of slit saw this off. That's going to retract and then come in on this side. Now, we didn't leave any material there, so I was just guessing there by my distance, and we will put all these files in the end. So this is 1 inch distance from side to side here, so my half inch isn't leaving anything. Generally, in a part like this, you want to leave enough material that you can break it off, but not so much that I would need to go out and get kind of a slit saw or something for, and then I would just clean it up on like a Scotch-Brite wheel. So on our last pass here, we can go in and just modify this number to be something like maybe 490 or 495. And now we'll get kind of a little sliver in there. So some other thing I might do is maybe take these out. In this case, they're fine because we're leading in enough. But if we simulate this to the last one here, we should be pretty much done, ready to go run this. And that's leaving just a little sliver in the middle there to kind of break this off. And this would be just one operation in a 3 axis. So let's move over to like kind of a strip of parts and I will save this so you guys have it at that point and we'll move in here. So a lot of times we get a little part like this and instead of cutting up, this order might be for 1,000 or maybe for 5,000. Instead of cutting up all those individual pieces and having somebody load them, what I'll generally do is do them in strips. So I have my body here. I'm going to do this with just bodies. You certainly could make this one component, one body a component, and then pattern that. We have real simple geometry here, so I don't really need to do that for my programming. But again, I'm kind of thinking about the finish line when I'm starting, so I can make sure that I properly prepare for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and create a sketch. I want to make my stock, and let's just say my stock is. You can just draw this rectangle out, and then we can add some dimensions here. We'll say this is maybe 1 inch, and maybe this is a little bit bigger than 6 inches. We'll make this like 7 inches. So on a normal Kurt Weiss that's 6 inches wide, will be hanging out, a little bit on both sides here. And then what I want to do is I'm going to hit escape there and I'm going to kind of just position this. So there's a bunch of different ways we could do this. I can draw a line from here and I'll snap that there and it's still kind of crooked. So a lot of times I'll just grab this and just say horizontal vertical. And then we could actually give a distance here. One of the thing you might notice is we didn't select a face here, but I also have auto project geometry turned off just because a lot of times the sketches I'm making are for manufacturing and I really don't want to dump unnecessary geometry into there. So that's why you'll find I don't have any point here to snap to if I want to give an actual dimension here. So in my case, I would hit P for project, grab this, and then I can, either um, just dimension from this line to maybe like this point that we don't have. So we'd have to drop a point on there first. But again, I'm not getting, a bunch of unnecessary geometry that I don't need. So I can hit dimension to this, and we can make this just like 50 thou or something. And then what I'll do is hit finish sketch. We can hit E for extrude. On this, I'm kind of defining my stock first, so I'm going to be drawing my stock. And in this case, I really want to have kind of two sides because they're not going to be symmetrical. So on this side, we're going to go down maybe minus, or we'll make this point 250. And then on this side, we'll go just big enough to go above the part. So maybe we'll make this 0.5. Now that wiped out my part, obviously not my intention. So I'm going to come over here and just say new body. And then that'll just dump a body in there. So now I have that body and I can hit OK. I generally then expand this out and I'll take the second, my stock body I made, and we can name it. And then the next thing I pretty much always do is go to opacity control and I make this 50%. Um, Now I'll grab this body and what I want to do is make a rectangular pattern of them. And the reason I want to have all the bodies is because when I go to cut this out, if I did make some sort of pattern to rough this out, it would only be for the one part. Really on my setup, I want to make all of these parts. So I'm going to do that now with just kind of patterning these bodies. So we can say body, we can pick the body we already did for a direction. We can grab a dimension here and we can just drag this out. And then generally what I do, I know I'm going to cut these at 7 inches and we can just modify this. And I want to have enough of these on here. So we'll probably put four. I want to have enough of these on here, but I also want to make sure my tool can fit in between here when I'm roughing this out. So this would probably be as much as I want. And I know this is probably a little wasteful with this, so we might have wanted to get a different size, but we're going to go with this. I'm going to hit OK here. So now the last thing I really need to do is we could do this also without having any of that geometry, and we probably will do that just because I'm not a big fan of making like another sketch on the bottom of these to drive my line. So from this point, we're pretty much set up. I'm going to go straight from design to manufacture. I'm going to say I want to create a new setup. Now it gets a little messy in Fusion when we have multiple bodies, so I have to come in here and select um, the bodies I want to work with. So I can click and hold on this and come through here and pick these bodies. But generally what I would just do to make it simpler here is just turn off my main stock body and then just pick these bodies here. For my stock, then I would just go from solid and I would just pick the stock. We could put this kind of wherever we want. When I hit OK, it's going to turn everything on because I have my sync visibility turned on. We'll go a little bit into that on the next part. But the first thing I want to do here now that I've defined all the bodies I want to cut is I want to rough this out. So I'm going to come in here and go to adaptive clearing. We'll go straight to a tool and let's first try a 1/4 inch. That should be, yeah, that'll be plenty. Um, Again, my settings are kind of parametric. I have these linked to my tool. So if we say edit expression, you guys can see what I have in there. Tool flute length times 0.95 gives me about 95%. And in this case, with a 1/4 inch tool, that's probably a little ambitious with that 100. So I'd probably make this maybe like 50, depending on the machine I was running it on. And then here we can come through and rough this out. And we can see this did a really nice job of doing all of the parts, right? So if I would have made a setup with a single part and tried to pattern this, I wouldn't have got the same result because it just would have ate up all this one material. And then I would have tried to pattern that a bunch of times. So really, again, thinking about kind of our finish line, when we're starting is always good. Um, so in this case here, let's just go around these parts with the same tool. Hit OK, and we can also come in here and do like a face. And we'll grab just these tops. So we can simulate this now, and I'm probably not going to go through and drill these just because everybody hopefully understands how to do that. But this is going to come in here and kind of burn these up, doing the outside and then facing off those tops. So we could then drill the holes or whatever. And one thing I'd probably do on this adaptive is I would drop this um, the height here negative a little bit more than my cutter. So it's going to leave 20 thousandths by default, which is what we have set here. And that kind of stacks. So I want to keep that in mind when I'm putting in this number. So I would say below my model, I want to go probably about 150 minus 0.15. And then what that's going to do is just go to about 130 because we're going to leave 20 and then that'll leave enough room for my saw. Now I always want to be cautious when I'm doing this of how much material I'm clamping onto. So I would really want to pay attention to this and either make a set of soft jaws if I don't want to cut into my hard jaws obviously, but set up a set of parallels or something to hold this kind of accordingly to that step. So again, we're pretty good here. And I'm going to actually use that same method. Now, one of the things we could do in Fusion that I've done often in the past is this toolpath pretty much does what I want. Has my tool, has all my settings and everything. We can right click on this and hit copy. I can just come over to this setup and I can right click on here and hit paste. We could do this also with like a template or something like that, but you can see my stock contours are already selected in here for me. So really I just need to select um, these, these lines here and I'm just holding Alt to do a single selection here. And then one thing I don't know is how wide my part is. So we can just hit OK. This is probably going to either fail or cut enough, but what I want to do is get a measurement from this side to this side. So we're at 390. So I want to be, a little bit less than half there on these. So one second. So half of 390 is 0.195. And what we could do is just go to probably like 192 or something like that. Again, depending on how much run out your slit saw had, you could adjust that. But that gives me my number here. And then for my radial stock to leave, we can say minus point, 192. Leaving my axial alone because that's the height of my slit saw there. So now I can come in here and hit simulate, and we can play through these, and we'll go to this kind of slit saw pass here, and then we can play this, and this is going to come down and cut through those. And I wanted to play this a little bit slower, so we'll drag this through. Um, so this is going to come through there, and it looks like we got to finish. We got to fix our facing pass there because we didn't get enough passes. And then this is going to come through and buzz and just leave a little bit of material underneath there for this slit saw technique. So let's come in here and fix this facing pass. And all I would do generally in a situation like this is just with my stock offset, maybe give this like a point, 125 or something like that. And then we should get multiple passes. So now when we simulate this and just play to the end, we see that that face is cleaned up. And obviously we didn't do the chamfers of the holes, but you guys get the idea. So let's move on to our last um, part here. Now, this is kind of a strange part. And the reason I kind of picked this, and we'll turn off the stock also, it's just because this is a part normally that would be really, really hard to hold on to in like soft jaws or something like that. It's curved. Obviously, we can't clamp it on the bottom because it would just push out. Clamping on the top, we might be able to get some sort of, a little bit of force here, but generally, if we're making a lot of these, this real sharp corner on there is going to kind of eat up our soft jaws. So what I've done here is I just, I did the least amount of prep work I could without making this seem, super ambitious. But I just added some vices in here. For me, they're parametric. So I just typed in the spacing, I put in my stock size, and then I just kind of placed my part in the middle here. And then I did on my stock, I added a couple construction axes that are through kind of the center here, because essentially what I want to do is in a part like this, I would square these ends so we had like a good spot to locate off of, and then I would just flip this twice. So we could even do this just by cutting, a little area of this right here on this first operation and then flipping it around with, a face top. That way would be square and everything like that. But we'll just pretend that everything's kind of already squared up here. So I haven't done anything for the tool pass or anything yet. But what I want to do is I do need a boundary, right? The other thing I did was I did make a extended part. So essentially, what I did is I just copied this first body and I pasted a new one. So I came here and I said copy. I went to the top and I said paste new. That means it's a different, component. And then I just put part, extended, and I abbreviated it. And then what I did was just made a couple sketches and I pulled tangentially these out because I essentially want to make one side as much as I can and then flip it around and do the back side, and then I'm holding on to it, at the ends of these vices. And then and like I said, in the part two, leave as many, comments and everything as you guys need, questions, and we'll try to answer all those questions in the part two with Angela and myself. So I do need a boundary to do this. I'm going to come over here in my toolpath data. And I like to keep this organized. So I kind of put these empty components here, also like containers at times. So you see in my work holding, I actually have two vices in there. And what this allows me to do is, if I'm activated on this main level and I want to turn off my work holding, because I place them in this little, folder here, I can just turn off my work holding. So I know we don't have levels or anything like in Mastercam, but I've used this for a long time, almost like levels to put, parts or different, situations and empty components like that. So uh, under toolpath data here, I'm just keep trying to keep this organized, and I'm going to go create sketch. I'm going to create that sketch on the top of the stock here. And then I'm just going to draw a rectangle, and we can, modify this later. I want this to be big enough to not dip down, below my part here, because I want to rough out kind of this area, and we'll use this area, this same boundary for both sides. So here we'll say finish sketch, and it's turned off just because that's turned off. And then I hope that's all I need. I'm going to go straight from here to manufacture. And then one of the things you guys will notice when we get to the second side is that I have this synchronize active view setup, I have both of these turned on. What this top one does is synchronizes the view, so basically like, gives us kind of this home view of our X, Y, and Z, like we see it now. But when we flip to the backside and we activate that setup, it's going to flip it around, and then with the sync visibility, it shows whatever's kind of pertinent to that setup. So here I'm going to go to setup. Again, we have really messy selection here, and a lot of you might not. Um, Understand, what we're selecting here because we have so many bodies, and I do have two different parts that I want to work on. In this case, we're going to use the part. So I'm actually going to use this. And then in my fixture here, another nice thing about having it in that component is I can just check my work holding one, and it actually selects all of those things that are in that component. For my stock here, we'll go to from solid. We can just pick this solid here. We can place our position kind of wherever we want. So if we wanted to put a stop in here and this was squared off, we could put this at the center, or, anywhere there. Um, and we should be good. So when I hit OK here, the first thing I want to do is turn off those origins because those are a little gnarly. So we'll just turn these off. And then I want to turn off my stock. So getting into this part here, we'll probably again go to this adaptive clearing, come over here and grab this long end mill here. And then for my geometry, what I want to use is a selection, and I'm going to use that sketch that we have in toolpath data. And I'm just going to select the sketch level instead of turning it on and selecting it. That way, if there's any boundaries or anything in the future that I add to that sketch, they'll automatically be selected in this toolpath. So we'll close that out. In this case, I want it to be inside the boundary because that's how I drew it. And then we can just hit OK and see what it does. Now, with the boundary that I drew, I hope it doesn't kind of hack out the sides or the ends here. And we might have to modify that amount, but I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to hit simulate. And we can play into this and see kind of where we're at. So that looks pretty good for starting off. Um, really kind of captured what I wanted here. I probably would bump this out a little bit. And let's actually change that. I'm not going to change my sketch, but I'm going to do two things in here. I'm going to go into this adaptive, and I know I'm going to stretch this out so it's going to waterfall along the edge here. So I'm actually going to change what model we're working on. And I'm doing this a lot. I do this often to avoid geometry, and there's a lot of tricks we can do with this, but I usually turn off this include setup model just because that geometry is also in the part we're working with here. And then I'm going to pick this part. And then for my geometry here, we can just give it an additional boundary. So again, like hovering over anything in Fusion will give you this nice pop up here. So you can see I have it set to inside boundary, but we can also offset that. So I want to go out, enough to not, affect my part. So we could change this to like tool center on boundary, and then we might give this like maybe an extra 200 thousandths. We can hit OK, and we'll just make sure that that doesn't, it's coming close to our vices, but I think we're safe. So we'll come in here and we'll hit simulate, and we can play through this, and that kind of looks like what I want. So I might take this and actually duplicate this, and because we have some kind of tight areas in there, I would just go into the second one and change the tool. And then under geometry, I'm going to go to rest machining, which is turned on, but it's really from the stock setup. So if I hit OK right now, it's really just going to repeat all the work that the bigger tool did. In this case, I want to go for previous operations, and we can hit OK, and we'll see if we get any. We should get this to go inside the middle there a little bit, and it looks like we're not. So a couple settings that could help us out with that is there's a minimum cutting radius here, which is really pretty small. We can put this to 10, and then also with this fine step down, we can make this something like for rust machining here, we can make it like 20. And that should give us a little bit more definition. Well, we don't have to wait for that to generate. We can start working on our finishing passes. Here I'm going to go to a parallel, or actually not a parallel, because this kind of swoops back and forth, and we could do this whole top in kind of one operation. This might work, this might fail. Blend I would use for this, and then we can switch to uh, this 1/4 inch ball. And in this case, what I want to do is pick my drive surfaces and then pick the curves I want to morph from. And I want to go from here to here. With my step over here, we can put in, let's put in 0.1 and just see what it looks like when it generates. Uh, Not too bad, so I'm okay with trying to tighten it up. So we put this at 0.008. And we can take a look at this. It shouldn't take too long. Simulate these while that's going. And we'd probably want to do some sort of rest machining because we're still not getting in there from the ends. It looks like there's one more setting we could affect here under linking. This minimum ramp diameter, we could set this down real small to something like 20. And now it's going to probably try to helix into there just because that diameter was probably too big before. That looks pretty clean. So we can simulate these two while that's going. Let's simulate. And we can check out our finishing here. So that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to work on the tabs on this. So really what I want to do is like a 2D contour. And I'm just going to cut down about halfway on here. And we can use, whatever tool. We'll use this bigger one. Go to geometry here. And then from the top side, I'm going to hold down Alt. And I want to pick um, these contours here. And I'm just going to hit accept. And then I'm going to hold down Alt over here, grab this edge, pick this and kind of chain that together. In this case, I do want to go a little bit past here, so I'm going to put in like 0.15. And then for my heights, this is where it's kind of important. Um, we can pick like from a face, so we'd have a reference. So what I might do is just say from selection, and then grab this, and then we could actually just lift this up by like maybe 0.3. See where that is. Maybe I like 0.25. And hit OK. But now we have kind of a known face that we can use for the backside here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this real quick because I'm streaming. I would hate to lose this if Fusion crashed. But let's hit simulate here. And we'll play through this. We could actually just hit pause and say play to the end. And it's generating there, kind of doing its thing. Can you guys hear me all right? Can you hear me better, Wayne? All right, I hope that's better. I just tried to fix my audio a little bit, guys. Wayne told me it was a little bit low, so we'll try to speak a little bit more clearly. But all right, so it looks like everything generated there. Now, this is something that they're definitely working on in Fusion to make this a little bit better. But this is how I would do this in the past, and I feel like it's relevant to show this. I right click on this, and I'm going to go to stock, and I'm actually going to say that I want to save the stock. I'm just going to save this to my desktop, and I'm going to hit close here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop back into manufacture. And here's a little tip. I know a lot of people go between design and manufacture a lot. If this is something I already ran and I'm ready to set up the second side, what I usually do is protect this. And usually when I see these little lock icons, I know that this is safe because I've already ran it. And then I'm going to go into manufacture here. And when I insert this and go back now, we won't have all those invalidations and we need to regenerate. So I'm going to say insert mesh. And this is generally what you would want to do. You wouldn't want to upload this and then link it back into Fusion. That's going to open up that mesh. Now it's actually really big. So you can see my vices there and we can see the mesh. This is because Fusion exports in centimeters. So we just need to set this back to millimeters and then it'll correct the size for us. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually, just so I can visually see this, I'm going to use this stock for my second side. And then I do need to have these vices around there, and that's kind of why I made this axis here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this work holding, and I'm going to say copy, and then I'm going to actually paste a new one in here, and we'll rename it. We can name this op2. So now there's two sets of vices in here, and really with the second set, what I want to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to say move copy, and that put it looks like not in the center. So let's see if we can move this manipulator. So I just locked it to that axis there, and then all I need to do is really just rotate these 180. And then now they're on there for the second side. So I have two sets of vices in here now, this set and this set. And when I go to make my second side, we'll go back over here to manufacture. I'm going to say I want to make a new setup. Again, I can take my fixture and I can choose my op2 here for my model. We're going to use that same part. And then for my stock, we're going to set this to from solid. And even though this is a mesh, we're going to use it as a solid. We can flip our coordinate system here, pick up off of whatever. Could have blasted a hole in the end here and just probed that. But again, if you would want these ends to be squared, so you could rotate these accordingly. We could just pick up top center right there. We'll hit OK. And again, we can turn off, just turn these vices off if we want. Turn off these G59s. And then we're ready to go on the second side. So on the second side, we can kind of reuse some of these operations here. And I might even take all of these and just hit copy and then just paste them in here just to kind of speed up my workflow. And then I'll just grab the setup and say unprotect. And now with this one, all we should have to do is just hit generate. And it should keep all of our settings and our components and everything like that. And we're not going super far down below the model. And then with this one, we don't need that rust roughing for the inside. And then for this blend, I'm going to repick these for the other side. For my drive surfaces, again, we'll just pick this. That one's flat, but we'll surface it anyway. And then we'll grab this and this, and we'll morph between those. And let's just set this a little bit bigger so it doesn't take as long to generate on the stream. And then for our contour here, because we drove off of that again, like I said, we can come in here and just go to passes. And then for my stock to leave, actually we can just leave that alone. We can just adjust kind of what this measurement is. So we know we cut down by that amount the last time. So I want to say maybe minus 0.2, whatever, 35, or we'll say 240. And then we'll make this negative because our other offset was positive. So that should be pretty much it. So let's right click on here and hit simulate. Oh, don't do this. And we're good. So we'll hit play. And this is going to play through doing that side. Roughing this out, and we'll stay connected there in those areas. This is going to come through there and finish that. We'd probably want to come in there and clean that little piece sticking up. And I'm just going to pause this and I'm going to hit play to next operation. So this is going to generate all the way through there, and then we can see kind of the tabs here. So we got that piece and we're kind of holding onto it just by these little areas here. And then again, obviously this isn't multi-axis, but this would be a really good workflow for just a regular 3-axis machine here. And then when we play through this, we might want to just do a ramp or something from the top because just taking a single cut would be fairly ambitious here in the spot. But you can see we're holding on just by those little tabs. We could break those off and just clean them up. Um, so if I wanted to put a ramp in there, I would just go to this linking tab. Generally, I'll turn these off when I'm doing a ramp like this. And then for my ramping angle, depending on how aggressive I want to be, I'd probably say like 1 degree. And then I usually always put this ramp clearance height lower. So we'll say 0.02. And then in this case, because our toolpath starts at the top height, I would want to come over here and pick a selection. Otherwise, my ramp's going to generate way high, and say we're going to start there. So that'll come through and fix those. And our warning here that we get is just that our open passes are linked with a both ways zigzag. We're always going to get that when we do a open contour with a ramp like this. So you'll always get that warning, but it's just telling you that something happened there. So we can simulate through this one more time and just play this to the end. And there we go. We'll just grab these and we'll let that generate for a second. But so I hope you guys got a lot of value out of this. We'll check this out now. Sorry to cut myself off there, but this is going to come down here, and then obviously just take a little bit of the time to kind of reduce whatever chatter we would normally get with like a single kind of heavy pass like that. And then we're just holding on to it by a little amount. Obviously, I made it big enough here so that we didn't, kind of bump into the part we were holding on to there. But this would be a really good way there to tab this piece off. So let's switch back to the cam. And like I said, guys, I really appreciate you guys, coming out and checking out this live stream. I'm gonna read through all the questions here and make some notes. So if you guys had any, questions about some of the stuff that I did today, we can go over those again. Give me probably about 30 minutes, and once this gets uploaded, we'll put a link to the Google Drive so you guys could have all these files, take a look at them. And then on the next iteration of the tabs part two, it'll be Angelo and myself, and we will go over some even more advanced tabbing techniques for multi-axis. Thanks for coming by. Take it easy.